Good afternoon, everyone. We're going to go ahead and get started with today's webinar. I'd like to first welcome you to today's panel discussion on employer-based childcare solutions for the UP. And we'd like to thank you for joining us this afternoon. I'm Sarah Lucas from the Lake Superior Community Partnership. Before we get started, I'm going to give you just a quick introduction and a little background about the LSCP and why we're here today hosting this event in partnership with UP Michigan Works. The LSCP is a Marquette County-based organization that works with our regional partners to build a vibrant regional economy. We're an economic development organization, and as an economic development organization, we provide a range of services to support business attraction and retention in Marquette County, in the Marquette County region. We provide marketing and networking opportunities for business. We advocate for the region's economy, and we also act as a community partner and convener to address issues impacting our economy. In the course of all that work, we talk regularly with businesses and with employers throughout the region about what challenges they're facing, how they're dealing with them, and what resources they need in order to be successful. So over the last year that I've been a part of the LSCP, one really consistent theme in those conversations is how childcare or the lack of childcare access impacts employees at businesses throughout our region. All kinds of industries right now are struggling to attract and retain workers, and it's clear that some parents aren't able to work because of a lack of access to quality or affordable childcare, or just any childcare for that matter. We hear a lot of questions from businesses and from other community partners about what solutions are on the horizon for this issue and what can be done in the short term to deal with this really acute crisis that a lot of employers are struggling with. So because it's such a big issue for the businesses that we work with, LSCP has been participating in the UP Care Task Force, which we're going to hear a little bit more about in a few minutes. That group has been exploring different approaches to this issue, and one approach that they've discussed is how employers might be able to play a role in solutions, given that it's such an issue and such an immediate need for so many of them. But in order for employers to get engaged, it's important for them and for us to know what programs might make sense, what the opportunities are, what resources are needed, and what barriers we might anticipate in putting those programs together. Fortunately, in our region, we have some employers that have already taken steps to help address their employees' childcare needs and can answer some of those questions for us. So as we all work together to find ways to enhance access to childcare, the LSCP and UP Michigan Works invited some employers and some administrators of employer-based childcare programs to share their experiences in the interest of broadening the conversation about how employers can get engaged in solutions. So joining us today are Brian DeAugustine, the superintendent of Nice Community Schools, Jennifer Hutter, the executive director of Brookridge Heights Assisted Living and Memory Center, Jonathan Ringel, the executive director of Northern Lights YMCA, and Seth Johnson, the CEO of the United Way of Northwest Michigan. They're going to talk about programs that they put together for their own organizations or businesses, or that they put together in partnership with other employers and businesses. We're really grateful for our speakers today for the work that they've done on this issue and their willingness to share it with the region today. And we're really grateful to you for taking the time to join us and to learn more about solutions that might impact your organization or might work for your community. Before we get started with the panel, though, I'd like to introduce Janie McNabb. She's the one-stop operator for UP Michigan Works, and she's been coordinating the UP Child Care Task Force on behalf of Michigan Works. Janie is going to share just a little bit of background to orient us to today's discussion, and then we'll get into the panel discussion. After the panelists introduce themselves and their programs, we'll have some facilitated discussion and some opportunities for questions from the audience, which you can submit through the chat. Before we get started, just want to let you know that Megan and Ashley from the LSCP are on the call with us this afternoon. If you have any technical issues with the webinar, just feel free to contact them via the chat. Again, thanks everyone for joining us this afternoon, and thank you, Janie, for working with us to coordinate this event, and I will turn it over to you.
Great. Thank you, Sarah. Really appreciate that you're willing to partner on this and host this event. I'll tell a little bit about the background and purpose of the Child Care Task Force. This task force really exists to convene stakeholders across the UP that have some sort of vested interest or impact of the childcare crisis, really in the UP. So that includes employers, it includes economic development organizations, workforce development, childcare providers, childcare support programs, and advocacy programs, educational institutions, and more. It really is about bringing together a wide array of members so that we have diverse perspectives at the table. And in doing that, we really want to look at the childcare issue through the lens of its impact on the workforce and employers. Really having that economic development perspective, that workforce development perspective. And this task force was really born out of discussion at the table of the Workforce Development Board, which is the entity that oversees the programs run by UP Michigan Works. So the task force is fairly new in coming together. We've really identified at this point 3 primary focus areas. The first is data collection. With the partnership of the Great Start Quality Resource Centers and Great Start Collaboratives, we've been pushing out some surveys to different audiences. One is parents of young children who need childcare. So really trying to gather data on what the exact need is out there across the UP. Another, and one that's active right now, is for employers. So I'd love to ask, if you are an employer, or if you know of an employer, if you could fill out the survey if you haven't already. This is a way to help us really gauge what is the true impact of this issue on employers throughout the UP. And then we'll also be sending out a survey to childcare providers. So really finding out how things are going with them. And with that surveys, all of those surveys, we're going to do some focus groups. And with that data, hope to start targeting some solutions across the UP. The second focus area of the task force is employer-based solutions. And that's really where the idea for this panel came from. As Sarah said, we've heard from employers that they recognize the issue. They just don't really know what to do about it. And some have said to me, we'd love to offer on-site childcare, but that seems really overwhelming. And it kind of stops them, from really moving forward. We want to share that's not the only option. There are other ways to go about supporting your workforce. And that's why we wanted to highlight some of those ideas that are taking shape already and share that with you so that you can maybe start to generate some of your own ideas as well. The third focus area, the task force, is about childcare worker wages. I was doing some research yesterday just to make sure I had the latest information, and the median wage for childcare workers in the UP is $11.30 an hour. And that is based on 2020 data. The median wage for preschool teachers is $13.59 an hour. So that's the median wage. It all depends on the type of program you're working in and so forth, but it can be difficult to attract people to this very, very important profession. So those 3 focus areas, those are big issues. There's a lot to them. They're really complex. And that's why we need a lot of people to table. I'll just talk a little bit about some of those issues from the context of affordability. As a worker, you're going to have to make sense of the numbers in your own budget, right? Making sure that you can afford the childcare based on what you make. It comes down sometimes to a math problem. Does it make sense to put in the number of hours and pay for the childcare? As a childcare provider, those are your margins. That's your ability to cover your costs. And the difference between those two is really difficult to balance. Another kind of theme across all these issues is availability. And so we knew from way back, several years, that there aren't enough slots available in the UP to truly meet the need. And that actually was exacerbated quite a bit by the pandemic. The UP lost 10% of childcare programs during the pandemic. So it's even more of a crisis than it was before. And that availability, really, there's a lot of detail to that. So is childcare available where it's needed, where people live and or work, when it's needed, the shifts that the people are working, and for the age of the children they have. We know infant care is very limited. So all of that really makes for, again, a complex issue. And all the more reason we want to start to share some information and some possibilities with the community across the UP. And I would just want to say, undermining all of this and making sure we have a really true, solid foundation of quality is really of the utmost importance. This is not just a matter of making sure kids are watched while their parents work. It's a critical time for brain development. It's for social emotional development, a critical time as well. It's the time when the foundation is laid for developing those soft skills that we hear many employers talk about, their number one need when it comes to talent. So for everything I've just mentioned and many other reasons, that's why we have pulled together this task force. It's why we have brought you together today. And we're looking forward to hearing from our panelists. Before I hand it back to Sarah and we get into the panelists, I do just want to share a sneak peek of the results of that survey I mentioned before. We know at this time, 32% of respondents have said they have actually lost employees due to childcare challenges. 69% of respondents are experiencing absences and or tardiness due to childcare challenges. So the scope of this issue is big, and it's truly having a significant impact on what employers can do, how they can hire, who they can hire, and how they can make their business run. So with that, I will hand it back over to Sarah, and I'm looking forward to hearing from our panelists. Thank you.
Thank you, Janie. And I'm looking forward to seeing the full results of that survey. I think that will be really telling. I'm going to kick off the panel discussion here. We're going to start with Brian DeAugustine, the superintendent of Nice Community Schools. Brian's going to share his experience in providing some childcare options at the schools. Thanks for joining us today, Brian.
Thanks, Sarah. Thanks for having me. I wish I had some elaborate story where I pulled off some brilliant moves and opened a childcare center here at Nice Community Schools, but in actuality, it was really fairly easy. Now, obviously, as a school district, we have a few advantages just because of our proximity. We have 170 employees, so there was plenty of interest in a childcare center. It was actually our employees' idea. They approached me and asked if we could look into it. And because our people are immediately available to their children, the paperwork was really almost non-existent. I checked in with Laura down in Lansing, licensing and regulatory affairs, to make sure that we were on the right path. I had our school lawyers take a look at what we were going to do, and it just took a couple of weeks, and they said yes, and we opened up. Again, as a nonprofit, we are charging just enough to make the program solvent. On any given day, we have about 10 to 12 kids in our daycare program, and we staff accordingly, and we ask our people to give us, if they can, a month in advance notice of when their children are going to come, or at the very latest, the week before, because we have a couple of different options where you can pay by the month, by the week, or we do have some drop-in options for parents who run into trouble in their daycares, outside of our school setting. But again, I can't express that we just committed to the idea and we just worked through it until we made it happen. And it really wasn't that difficult. So I encourage others, to look into it. I think you'll be surprised to find that it might not be as hard as you think, depending on the size of your organization, of course, and the space and availability to actually house the center itself. But really, that's in a nutshell our experience here. It's been fulfilling. It's been running since August, and people seem really happy with it. Bringing their children with them to work, and being able to go see them if they need to during the day, and it just makes their lives a lot easier. So that's pretty much the story from Nice Community Schools, and I'll be glad to field any questions when we get to that portion of today's event.
Thank you, Brian. It's I think a great model and a good success story to start with. So thanks for sharing that. And we'll have some more questions for you after the panel is finished. Next, we're going to go to Jennifer Hutter from Brookridge Assisted Living. And Jennifer is going to share her experience in providing some childcare options for her workforce. Thanks, Jennifer.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me. So we are a 24/7 business. Brookridge Heights Assisted Living is a assisted living and memory care community that has about 90 residents who live here in our building. So we didn't have the opportunity to shut ourselves down or have limited hours. That's just not an option in a healthcare setting. So we had to get creative. One of the first things that we did was we started with creative scheduling. Typical healthcare industries are on this 7 to 3, 3 to 11, 11 to 7 kind of shifts. And that just doesn't work when we have childcare and we have individuals who have maybe limited availability. So we really went with creative scheduling and started focusing more on 4, 8, 6, 10, 12-hour shifts instead of the typical 8-hour shifts that we were doing previously. So that was very helpful. We utilized OnShift. So if it's a great scheduling program that helps the employees have it right on their phone. So if anyone isn't familiar with OnShift, I'm happy to share about that system because it really does help when you're starting to schedule a lot of employees in various different shifts. So if anyone wants to learn about that, I'm happy to share our experience with that program. The other thing we did was we identified what moms we had in the building who needed childcare. And we developed a Moms Helping Mom program, which enabled us to pair individuals who didn't work the same shift, and we gave them opposite days off. So for example, if Julie has her day off on Wednesday, on her day off, she's watching Kelly's kids, whose Kelly is working at the building. It just really worked well by pairing them together kind of as a buddy system, allowing and identifying where that problem is, and then being creative with our scheduling so that they can help each other out and have some ownership in it and watching each other's kids. It also reduced call-ins and call-offs because they were trading favors with each other. And then, of course, we're cooking meals for 90 people here in the building. So adding a couple more meals onto that really isn't that big of a deal. So being able to offer them lunch for their household during that time so they can take that stress off made a world of difference. But being creative and thinking outside of the box, that's kind of how we made it through it. COVID is still very real here in our building, so we're still managing a lot of challenges that are coming up. So I'm interested to hear what other folks are coming up with in their solutions too. So thanks for having me.
Thanks, Jen. I think that your approach in terms of understanding specific childcare needs is a really great starting point for anybody thinking about starting down this road and working with their employees on childcare. So really appreciate your example. We're going to see if Jonathan Ringel from YMCA is able to talk with us right now. He's having some audio challenges. Jonathan, thanks for joining us here today. He's going to share a little bit about his experience in working with an employer to provide childcare options. Thanks, Jonathan. We can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
We can hear you now. Thank you.
Excellent. Just wanted to make sure. Appreciate it. As Sarah mentioned, happy to talk about our for-profit, nonprofit partnership here at the Northern Lights YMCA in Iron Mountain down in Dickinson County. The Y's been here in our community for about 11 years. And we started off just quiet and calmly with an active group of people that wanted to save a community center facility, mainly for the use of the pool. So we moved our operations forward with a founders campaign to renovate the building and begin operations here. And we quickly grew quite large. Something that was unique for RY was that we had tenants in the building. So we had a number of community action agencies, medical prescription assistants, and other such agencies that did rent from us in the facility as we slowly grew over time. So we eventually reached a point, the tenants were important for us for our operations for a revenue stream. But we really wanted to look at an opportunity to continue to grow what the Y does and what we're here for and what our mission is. So in 2018, and I should mention, during this time, we had had some discussion with employers in the community regarding childcare. We wanted to better align and collaborate with our other center in Escanaba, which had had childcare for a number of decades. We just weren't at that point as a newer YMCA in our growing and learning, and we had had discussions regarding the childcare need in the community with a number of businesses, parents. We were receiving good feedback from people moving to the community for our larger employees that had come from areas, maybe the Fox Valley, Green Bay, where their children were enrolled in YMCA childcare, and we did not offer that. And so that was pretty important as we started hearing that. 2018, we launched a capital campaign with a goal of 2.6 million. We were eventually able to raise 4.6 million, and during that time, our largest tenant announced that they were leaving. So the board made the decision, even though we were in the midst of the campaign, to move forward with changing our plans to include the construction of a child care center on site at our facility. We really thought it would be an excellent opportunity, to reach more in the community and to fulfill a need in the community. So we were really happy for their foresight on that. We did at that time immediately turn to systems control, which had conducted some extensive internal surveying themselves of their own company, just as far as some of the general cost of childcare, as far as the construction of an on-site facility, wages, requirements from licensing and regulatory affairs, and the needs of their current staff that were on site and staff that would be leaving if they couldn't find childcare or suitable care for their children. So systems and the YMCA quickly both saw a need to collaborate to address that childcare need. Systems was interested in joining the Y at our location. They did not have an interest in anything on site. So the Y really evaluated that, and we were very confident that our capital funds from the campaign would cover the construction of a child care facility here, but we'd never run a child care. So we started evaluating how partnering with systems would provide us some financial support for staff hiring and training before we actually opened, supplies and furnishings for the room, signage, marketing material, all things that we would not typically have budgeted. As I said, it came about quite suddenly. So systems wanted to offer access to childcare in a great start to quality star-rated facility, offering some STEM curriculum and just quality instructors while helping to retain their staff and employees. So we collaborated for a 3-year agreement with Systems, 2019 through 2021, and it was very beneficial, really for Systems and the YMCA as a whole, and really our entire community. Systems is a wonderful corporate partner with us, but that did not mean that Systems was, overtaking the child care center. They were a partner in the sense that we had a number of things we worked on with them, but as a Y, we've just been blessed to see the impact it's provided in the community and the needs met from those. So with our partnership, how that worked out with Systems was provided naming rights for our child care center. It is the Systems Control Little Sparks Child Care Center. We also offered priority and early enrollment, and Systems employees rise to the top of our waiting list. They also provided gold level banner support of our YMCA annual campaign. And in an effort to ensure that it was a good partnership for the entire organization, as not everyone does have children, we were able to work with some opportunities for some membership promotions for Systems employees only to help engage. So we found that to be very important. Over the past 3 years, we've seen the youth benefit the community. We've seen dozens of children from Systems employees use the child care center. Over 30 Systems employees' children have been enrolled in our day camp over the past few years. And we currently have over 100 systems employees who are members here at the YMCA. So an excellent, excellent benefit. I would say that we felt the partnership went well enough. We have just renewed for another 3 years as of last month. We really feel Systems saw not only us working through our high scope curriculum and our 3-star rating on our way to a 4-star this year, but also really our state-of-the-art facility. The Y stands apart from other childcare opportunities with our ability to provide a gym during the cold days like we're having now for activities. We bring in yoga and fitness instructors to do activities with the children. Our preschoolers actually participate in swim lessons on a weekly basis, and we do include a youth membership with the child care. So we have a number of families that use our child care that do also sign up for YMCA membership. So we found it to be an excellent benefit to the community, and we're just happy that we were able to partner with Systems Control, and I found it to be very beneficial. So I'll be happy to answer any other questions at the end. Thanks so much, Sarah.
Thanks, Jonathan. It's a great program and I think a great example for employers that are a little overwhelmed by the thought of starting their own program. It's a great way to build up existing capacity and existing programs in partnership with an employer. So thanks for sharing that with us today. Sure, we'll have some more questions once we get into the discussion part of the event. But for now, we're going to turn it over to Seth Johnson. He's the CEO at the United Way of Northwest Michigan, which is actually located in Traverse City. And he's going to share his experience running one of the TriShare pilots in Michigan. And he'll tell you more about how that went and what we might look forward to in the future. Thanks for joining us, Seth.
Thank you so much for having me today to speak with you a little bit about TriShare and some of the innovation that we're doing here to address our childcare crisis throughout Northwest Lower Michigan. So the Michigan TriShare Childcare Pilot Program, or TriShare, is an innovative approach to increasing the access to high quality, affordable childcare for working families, while also helping employers throughout our region retain talent and removing one of those major barriers for employment as well, too, as we've heard kind of throughout this first little bit. The overall purpose of TriShare is just to improve that affordability and accessing to quality care by implementing a model where the state, the employer, and the employee can share equal responsibility for childcare by contributing 1/3 of its total cost. So if you think about that, that is then allowing families who are often very overburdened with the cost of childcare, reducing their cost of childcare by 2/3, a massive benefit for many of our families that are receiving this. The program is being offered by the state of Michigan through the Michigan Women's Commission. We were one of 3 communities that were chosen throughout the state to pilot this over 2021 and into 2022. There are some obvious requirements that go along with this being a state level program, is that eligible employees have to have a household income between 185 and 285 of the federal poverty level. That is relative to the number of individuals that are in their household. So for instance, for a family of 4, that's roughly $74,000 a year that they can be making and still qualify for this program. Participating employees also, they cannot be eligible for the Child Care Development and Care Program, commonly known as Child Care Subsidy. Those families that qualify for that, they make less than 185% of that federal poverty level. So really, if you kind of look at this on a spectrum of the availability of kind of making childcare more affordable, you have childcare subsidy, and then in unique situations where employers are offering this benefit to their employees, you have the TriShare program that's going to cover all the way up to that 285% of federal poverty level. And these dollars can be used for any licensed care that is provided to children between the age of 0 and 17, including but not limited to preschool, childcare, before and after school care, and even summer programming. Currently in our five county region in Northwest Lower Michigan, we have 7 employers that are signed up and are offering this benefit out to their employee base. We have 25 families that have applied, and we have 5 families that are actively receiving benefits. So you might be saying, well, Seth, 25 families, but you only have 5 actively receiving that benefits. What's going on there? And as Janie mentioned earlier on, having those available slots is really, really difficult in our region right now. So we have 12 families that have qualified for the program. However, they do not have care, are actively seeking care for often the first time. So they are on multiple wait lists, and hopefully over the next little bit, they will be able to get into care. A handful of participants were below the income qualifications, and so we were able to then sign them up for that child care subsidy that I mentioned earlier. And then we had some individuals and families that were then over those income levels as well too. So while the numbers might not be massive, the impact has been. As an example, the TriShare program has allowed a young family with a 2-year-old daughter to be able to make enough for the first time for them to qualify for a home loan. They have been historically living in military housing and living with parents, and now they're able to go off on that adventure of trying to find a house in this crazy housing market that we have, and try to build themselves their first home or get into their first home. Other families are putting away money to invest for their kids' education, are helping to pay off debts, or investing in themselves as well too. And so from us at United Way of Northwest Michigan, we truly believe that this TriShare program is a very unique one for employers who are looking for a new way to attract and retain talent. It is a way for families who are often overburdened by the cost of childcare to be able to afford it, and then be able to use those additional resources to invest back into their family, and is overall helping our region be better. And so I just wanted to preview a little bit about what TriShare is, but look forward to the dialogue after this, and happy to answer any questions that you all might have. Thanks again so much for having me.
Thanks again for joining us, Seth. I think many of you might have heard that the state has expanded that program throughout Michigan, and over the last couple of months, we're actively seeking applications from communities throughout the state. So it's great to have Seth's experience so we can hear a little bit more about the realities of that, how it actually plays out on the ground. So with that, we have a few questions for our panelists just to kind of kick off the discussion. Just some general questions for panel as a whole, starting with what you see as some of the bigger challenges around implementing your specific programs. As you put these together, what were the biggest challenges that you encountered? Was it staffing? Was it finding funding? Was it regulatory or administrative issues? It sounds like maybe in the TriShare program, just lack of care might have been a challenge, but what would you say was the biggest challenge in terms of building your program? Any takers to go first on that?
I can start. One of the biggest things is that this is new, right? This is kind of a very innovative approach. And so it's always great working with the state on something new, because they definitely have it all figured out when they roll these programs out. And so there's just been some learning curve that we worked through, but also just employers and how they roll this out to their employee base has been very unique. I think these innovative approaches that we're all talking about might make a lot of sense, but sometimes it takes a little bit of time to get people to buy in, believe in it, and get it going.
I think that's kind of the key, Sarah. For me, it was just my own personal trepidation as the head of the organization to just say yes. Once I said, yeah, this is doable, it really, I can't stress how it wasn't that hard to do. And again, I realize that we have a little bit of an advantage being a school district, but it just was getting started. That was the biggest first hurdle.
From a healthcare perspective, our biggest challenge is staffing. There's, especially in the realm that we're playing in, there's a lot of opportunities out there for people to find jobs and have jobs. And it's not necessarily an employer's market. Staffing was the biggest challenge in finding enough people to be a 24/7 business. And we still struggle with that to this day.
I would say with our partnership, it actually started off a little bit more focused on regulatory You know, at the beginning, we had not opened a child care center here in Dickinson County, so it was a little bit more unique for us as far as, you know, what fire marshal were we supposed to be having visit? I know we've had some discussion with just the distance that we face across the northern part of the state. We are much closer to people. I would have loved to have just come up from the state of Wisconsin, but I had to have people from Grayling or Gaylord come inspect our facility for fire operations or building inspections, just to make sure that we complied with all of the licensing. And I would say after, you know, that point for us, we've just continued to want to make sure that we're providing a service that benefits the community and really meets the needs of our partners. So we consistently and regularly meet with systems to ensure that they're happy with the work we're doing, the programming and what we're doing. And like many people, ebb and flow, it can be that staffing issue. At current time, we are doing quite well and we've been pretty blessed throughout, but when you do work with childcare, certainly the licensing and ratios is something that is different than any other profession. I was the first person licensed, and I will certainly run out of a Zoom meeting if I am needed in a childcare room to make sure that we are meeting ratios. So I myself sometimes end up in the childcare center, which, you know, is a completely different situation than our Y before we actually had that. It is an intensive and critical need, but it fills such a void in the community. So we're so blessed to have the partnership and have this child care facility in the Dickinson community.
Okay. Thank you all. When you think about those challenges, if you could go back in time, as you were starting your program, what are the kinds of resources, whether it's information or technical assistance or actual dollars, what would have been helpful in actually building your program, or might be helpful to other employers or partners that are looking at creating similar programs? What are the kinds of resources that you think would be most helpful to creating these programs or to continuing your own? I might call on Seth because he's in the position of having worked with the state on a new program and might be in the position of being able to provide some of the information and experience that would have been helpful as you put your program together. So anything to offer there, Seth, in terms of what sources might be most helpful for other organizations to look for?
Yeah, I think that if someone is actively looking to roll out TriShare or something similar, I just think understanding how that benefit would impact your employee base would be great. You know, just having some clarity and processes. And so I think that for us, we're really grateful for the learning curve that we went through, but at the same time, we're happy to share that information moving forward about the documents and the processes that we created. If I was to go back, I think that I would have just kind of put more time and resources into making sure that everything is right. Rolling out new benefits to an employee base, right, can be weird and wonky and things like that. And just making sure that you're going slow to move fast, I think would be the only thing I would have done from the rollout of our program.
I was going to say, Sarah, you know, I keep using the caveat that we're a public school, but the piece that the parents are immediately available to any small business that's looking to open, you know, an in-house daycare, that rule would still apply to them as well, which really limits the paperwork that you have to juggle in order to open the center. So if you have enough employees with enough small children and you want to open your own center, as long as they're there, you know, just down the hall from the kids, it's really easy to do, in my opinion.
I would say, Sarah, you know, it's pretty interesting, even though I have a pretty strong background in and had actually worked for our Dickinson Iron Great Start Collaborative. I wish first I had utilized our resources a bit better. You know, Great Start and Great Start to Quality really provide some excellent resources that would have been more helpful for us to lean on as we got our child care started. And the other thing I would say, as we all know in any industry, is you really have to be willing to adapt and change with what best suits you. You know, I would say when we first started the partnership, of course, I think we just thought based on the collaboration and need with systems, the child care would be filled immediately on day one. It took us a little bit more time to fill, of course, because you are marketing, you are promoting, you are new to the community. People like to tour child care facilities. They like to check out the operations. So that took us a little bit more time. And when I say adapt as well, we actually heard a lot in our community, and we have had to change. Now that we're full, we actually started with part-time. And I know that can be another debate in childcare, people on certain shifts or that don't work full-time. We did allow that at the beginning just to fill our childcare, and I think it was really a benefit for parents. We grandfathered a lot of those in, but we have been so busy now. We did not, face a lot of criticism, but that was a change for us, and that did help us as far as staffing, and employment as well. I mean, when it's part-time or more sporadic, it's difficult to tell someone to go home when you are guaranteed hours and your child is enrolled for, the appropriate hours per week when parents are working. We really have turned more to full-time staffing, and that was a big change for us as well over the last year, from that part-time to almost all of our enrollees are now here full-time.
Great. Thank you to all of you for those questions. I do have one question that appears to be a little bit of a follow-up on something Seth said, so I'd like to jump in here. Many employers have multiple locations. They have lots of employees who may not need a benefit, a childcare benefit. So how have you seen kind of balancing that and approaching that delicate topic? And I'll, maybe start with Seth, because you brought it up as, the benefit to employees and rolling that out, but I'd love to hear from others as well.
It's a great question. And it's something that I think that employers are all handling differently with the multiple different locations. We're actually able to roll it out to different locations. So we have an employer in our region, for instance, that has 5 satellite locations across the entire state of Michigan. The Women's Commission has been a great partner and is allowing us to roll out the benefit to all of their satellite locations. And so that might not be the level of concern as it would be of, hey, there's a great benefit that you're rolling out for, employees that have children, but what are you doing for me who I don't have children, and what benefit do you do for that? I'm not in the HR world, so I can't give you an expertise on how you do that. But what we have kind of heard from the state of Michigan is, for instance, other employees provide transportation assistance, where if you are utilizing public transit, that they will help cover a portion of that cost. And so I think that the messaging around it is very unique. But I think it's really handled company by company on how they are rolling this out to their employee base. There's some employers that are choosing to say that there's a level of seniority that you need to have this benefit. From our side of the table, we don't really dictate that. We more just allow the flexibility of the employers to roll it out as they see fit. That probably didn't answer the question the exact way that you wanted, but at least that's the reality in our world of how we're addressing it.
No, thank you. That's great. And I guess I'll ask any of the others if you've seen how you're, how you might be handling it or how others are handling it.
I'd be happy to talk. I think I described a little bit in, my presentation, but it really is true. That was one of the aspects that changed in our 3-year agreement that we are now into 2022 through 2024. We were a little more focused as far as our partnership with Systems Control on the child care aspect. And of course, that was feedback that we did receive. Not everyone has children, and not everyone would really have use for the child care center. We appreciated the opportunity to use the facility, the YMCA facility. So as I mentioned, we had some special enrollment opportunities. We have actually extended a permanent discount to all systems employees at the YMCA for the duration of our 3-year partnership now, just as a way to really strengthen that partnership and allow an opportunity for those that do not have a need for childcare, but really provide a benefit to the employer as well. And we've received a lot of positive feedback as well. As I mentioned, over 100 systems employees currently using our facility on a regular basis and utilizing a membership. And we found that as something that was very beneficial. We did also enhance and expand a lot of our marketing. I think even employees that don't necessarily use the Child Care Center are excited to see the systems control Little Sparks Child Care Center out and about in the community, whether on a billboard or here on our building or in the newspaper. So we've tried to expand that on our social media just to make sure that we're really reaching out and providing an opportunity to benefit the employer and the employees that don't necessarily specifically use the Child Care Center, which was the impetus for our partnership. And I think that's something that, you know, is unique for a place like the Y to be able to offer to an employer.
Great, thank you.
Just as kind of a follow-up to some of Nathan's points, would any of the other panelists care to share some of the feedback that you've gotten from your participants or your employees? I think you might have touched on it a little bit, but what are you hearing from employees about the difference that your programs make?
Ours has been just widely embraced. You know, I can't think of anything better than just being able to bring your child with you to work. I wish that option had been available when my kids were little, and it's just been positively received, you know, throughout the entire district. Even the people whose kids are grown or who don't have kids think it's a riot to have babies and toddlers running around in the school. It just makes the school family even stronger.
Jen, sorry,
No, go ahead, Sarah.
I was just going to ask what kind of feedback you've heard from your employees about your programs.
I think the biggest thing is the flexible scheduling has made a difference for our employees, is being able to, if they don't need to participate in sharing childcare with each other, just having a flexible schedule to be able to still work their job and be able to take care of their kids. So this flexible scheduling and being creative in that scheduling, we did a lot of analysis of our building and figuring out where our peaks and valleys are. So where are we the most busy? Where do we need the highest level of staffing? And where can we maybe manage with a little less staffing at that time and still be safe? So those were big challenges for us to be able to identify so that we could accommodate the residents with that, or the staff with that flexible scheduling.
I think that's a great example of how you don't actually have to provide childcare in order to accommodate some of these childcare needs. Just being considerate of your employees' schedules and their family needs can make a big impact, particularly when there's just limited options for providers available. So thanks for sharing that. As you think about your program, do you see opportunities to grow your program or for similar businesses or organizations to create similar models? What do you see as the potential for expansion? And then what advice do you offer employers that are considering this type of program?
I don't mind starting. I guess I would say that it is something that definitely can be done with the right partnership and collaboration. As I mentioned, we were kind of a little bit, you could say, behind the eight ball, since this came up in the midst of a campaign, and we had pretty much already completed renderings and plans for how our building would look at the end of the construction project, which was focused mainly on our aquatic center and fitness. So it really was a big change for us, but I do believe with the right partner and the right collaboration, anything really is possible. And as I said, we have just been blessed by it. I mean, we have constant communication and open and transparent communication. And I would say that there is opportunity for expansion and growth, absolutely. I would probably end with, you know, each time you have a success, there's always a challenge. And one of the areas we are absolutely looking at, which we know is a need in the community, is the off-hour childcare. We are evaluating with systems and opportunity to have more evening childcare. We have also surveyed and evaluated that opportunity in the community. We do occasionally have a need for that. So we would like to evaluate that opportunity into the future. I think from the business perspective, there is an ask, but we haven't seen unfortunately, a critical mass ask yet. And for us, it would be a staffing issue to have the facility open, beyond 6, 7, 8 o'clock in the evening. So that is something that we are looking at, but I really do feel that it is possible. Collaboration, as I always say, we have to do more with less in a rural location, and we have to really lean on our neighbors and be able to partner, because that's all that we have to depend on. So
Thanks, Jonathan. Any other panelists want to weigh in on that? Opportunities for other employers to start programs like this or to grow this existing program?
With TriShare, it's a state level program, and unfortunately, as of today, the application is closed for this next year. But that doesn't mean that this level of innovation around reducing the cost of childcare couldn't happen, with or without the state. And so I think that encouraging people to look at a model of rolling this out to your employees to help cover maybe not a third, maybe just a smaller portion than that to help make it more affordable is an interesting innovation that could be taken on. Our contract, we're excited that we're going to be expanding to cover a larger swath of Northwest Lower Michigan, and look forward to expanding that out to more employers. And then we are also hopeful to be working with private philanthropy to maybe extend that income qualification up and above 285% of the federal poverty level to a higher level, because we just know there are so many families that even above that 285% of federal poverty level still have a massive burden with the cost of childcare. So lots of innovation and growth potential for us with this kind of paradigm of having employers contribute and have this benefit to employees.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So we had a couple more questions in the chat and the Q&A. I just want to kind of in general, those comments and questions regarding the childcare workforce, I want to address. As we've seen, this is a complex problem. And so the efforts of an employer to try and provide support for their workforce to afford childcare is only going to be possible if it is also available. And it can only be available if there are workers to provide the childcare and so forth. It's like a domino effect. And so I think our effort with this particular panel is to tackle one slice of that and to say, there's something employers can do. Let's start talking about it. The other issue of the childcare workforce, there are a couple of things starting to happen. One, there is a new apprenticeship program that is being sponsored by Upper Peninsula Michigan Works in partnership with some childcare providers and educational institutions that will make it a little easier for people to get trained in this profession and get started working in it to earn while they learn. So that's one option. There are a variety of programs being discussed. There are only a few available right now in terms of training across the UP, but new ones are starting to come available and being looked at. So that's another piece of the puzzle. And then I do believe that this survey that's going out this week, you saw in the chat, Deb, thank you for answering that. It will be emailed out to all providers from the Great Start to Quality resource centers, just to get more information about the providers' challenges, their availability, and so forth. So again, I think we're gathering data. We're trying to get a sense of the main issues with this, and I do believe we're on the right track. But it is a really complex issue and something we're having to address from many different angles. Does anyone want to, kind of talk a little bit about that in terms of your experience with availability and the challenges there?
As I mentioned a couple of times now, if you have your daycare on site at your place of business and the parents are immediately available, the regulations are much easier to meet. In thinking of like a private company that I've read about that does it, the Patagonia Clothing Company, and their satellite offices have on-site daycare. And I think, if someone's big enough and has enough, kids who are part of their employees' families, I think it's easier than some people think it is to get started. And I know I keep hammering at that point, but for the business leaders that are on the call that want to do it in-house, the steps are not that difficult to climb.
I would just say it's something that us at United Way of Northwest Michigan, we're looking at as well too. We have a lot of our employee base and our employers saying, like, we have a workforce issue, and we keep saying, to solve your workforce issue, you need to solve your childcare workforce issue, because they go hand in hand and together. And so it's really great to hear the innovation around the apprenticeship model and different ways to get people credentialed to be able to offer this care. But there are some things that are just around the edges that make things easier for childcare providers to onboard people. In our region, for instance, there is a lack of fingerprinting, where it is a big lag time, or they're not able to get an appointment to get the fingerprinting done at the capacity that they need done for licensing. And so there's some innovation happening about how we just better fingerprint childcare employees as well too. So even though it might be these big level things that do need to be addressed, right? The childcare model has been broken for a very, very long time. There are these things kind of around the edges that's going to make it better while we address this larger issue at the same time.
Great. I see we're coming up on time, and I just want to thank everyone for contributing to the chat, asking your questions. And Sarah, what are your last kind of thoughts on this?
Just thank you to all of our panelists for kind of paving the way for organizations and employers here in the UP. We really appreciate the example that you're setting. And given the comments here in the chat, I think everyone else does too. This is really great, really great practices that we're learning about today. Like you said, Janie, there are just so many complexities layered into childcare that we understand we're just addressing one part of the equation here, but it is a really big piece. And I think having employers engaged in the discussion elevates the importance, I think, in terms of policy solutions and funding for some of our decision makers. I think it also proves a really significant advantage for employers who are trying to attract and recruit and retain employees in this really competitive market. I think having childcare opportunities and options like this is something that employees are really appreciative of, and can really make the difference that we heard about in terms of attendance and tardiness and overall ability to work even. So again, just thank you to all of our panelists for your experience today, and thanks to all of you for joining us and for your comments and questions.